Alex had never expected to find an alien stranded on a distant moon. His mission was simple: check on an old communication outpost on a barren rock. What he didn't know was that this moon, far from being empty, would hold an encounter that would change everything. When he first spotted the ship, it was already in pieces, scattered across the surface. The craft had crashed, leaving a trail of wreckage behind. As he approached the smoking remains, Alex's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had it been a meteor strike, or was this something far more dangerous? Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence, sharp and commanding. "Stay back, human." Alex froze, his hand still on his weapon. The voice was alien, cold, and demanding. He turned to see her, standing tall, her skin a shade of blue he had never seen before. Her eyes gleamed with intensity, filled with both strength and a sense of danger. She was a warrior, with armor that gleamed under the dim light of the moon. Her posture was defensive, and she was gripping a weapon, something far too advanced for Alex to recognize. For a moment, the two stared at each other, the alien woman, a stranger from another world, and Alex, a lone human just trying to complete his mission. "I am not afraid of you," Alex said, his voice calm, unwavering. The alien woman's expression shifted, surprise flashing across her face. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" she asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and challenge. Alex just smiled. "I've faced worse." Her eyes narrowed as she took a step forward, analyzing him. She had been in countless battles, fought against entire fleets of aliens, and had seen fear in the eyes of those who encountered her. But this human, this strange man, was different. He didn't even flinch. There was no fear, no hesitation. Just calmness, just confidence. The alien woman wasn't used to this. Every alien she'd met before, human or not, had recoiled at her presence. They had trembled before her power. But not this one. "You should be scared," she warned, her grip tightening on her weapon. "I am not like you. I could easily kill you." Alex's smile didn't waver. "Maybe, but not today." His words weren't cocky, nor were they dismissive. They were calm, as if he had seen far worse threats in his life, and this alien woman was no different. The calmness in his voice seemed to stir something inside her. She wasn't sure if it was admiration or curiosity, but it made her pause. "I'm just here to help," Alex said after a moment. "If you want it." Her eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of weakness or deception. But all she saw was a man standing before her, ready to offer help in the middle of an unknown wasteland. Something about him felt different. Something about this human felt genuine. After a long silence, she lowered her weapon slightly. "Help? You would help me?" Alex nodded, his gaze steady. "I've got tools. I can fix your ship. I just need to know how to work it." Zilara, the alien woman, was still uncertain. She had never trusted anyone easily, especially not humans. But something in Alex's eyes told her that he was different. Maybe she could trust him. Maybe. She slowly nodded. "Fine. But remember, human, I am not to be underestimated." Alex grinned. "Same goes for you." Zilara kept her eyes on Alex as they worked together on her ship's wreckage. She was careful, keeping a safe distance and constantly sizing him up. The human seemed calm, too calm. She had never met anyone who wasn't afraid of her, not even the bravest soldiers in her own world. Yet here was Alex, standing without fear in front of her. She found herself wondering more and more about this human. What was it that made him so different from everyone else? "You're still not scared," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Why?" Alex glanced up from the ship's engine. "I told you already, I faced worse." Zilara's sharp gaze never left him. "Are you afraid of anything, human?" Alex smiled, but there was no mockery in it. It was just a simple, understanding smile. "I guess I'm afraid of losing my humanity. But fear itself, not really." She didn't understand what he meant by that. To Zilara, fear was natural. It was a tool, something to use to stay alive. If you didn't fear your enemies, you were already dead. But Alex didn't seem to be using fear the way others did. He didn't even seem to think it was necessary. "I don't know why you're not scared of me," she said, almost to herself. "You know what I am, don't you?" "I know exactly what you are," Alex replied, not looking up from his work. "And that's why I'm not scared." Zilara stiffened. His words struck her deeper than she expected. What did he mean by that? Humans were supposed to be terrified of aliens, especially one like her. She was an elite warrior from a feared race. She had the strength and power to crush anyone in her path, yet this human didn't fear her at all. It was like she was nothing more than a minor inconvenience to him. "You humans," Zilara began, her voice growing colder. "Always so. Weak. Always bowing to the stronger species. Always running. Always hiding." Alex looked up finally, his expression serious. "I don't think we're weak. I think we're just different. You see strength in violence, but sometimes strength is in standing up for what's right." Zilara was taken aback. The way Alex spoke made her reconsider her view of humans. She had always seen them as weak, fragile beings who feared everything that was different. But now, as she listened to him, she realized that maybe she had misunderstood them. "Right." Zilara repeated the word slowly. "Humans, stand up for what's right." Alex nodded. "Yeah, it's not always easy, but someone has to do it." Zilara stared at him. She had seen countless worlds fall into chaos and ruin, all because people were too afraid to fight back. She had never seen a human talk like this, so confident, so certain of his beliefs. "You think you can fix this ship?" Zilara asked, changing the subject. She didn't want to think about what he had said any longer. It made her uncomfortable. "Of course," Alex replied. "I may not know everything about alien tech, but I've got the tools. And I'll figure it out." Zilara watched him for a moment, her mind racing. She had always relied on her own strength, her own skills. But Alex, this human, was different. He didn't rely on fear or power. He just had a calm certainty in him that was strange. Maybe, just maybe, she had a lot more to learn from this human than she'd ever imagined. The days passed, and Alex and Zilara continued to work on the damaged ship. The quiet of the moon's surface was broken only by the sound of their tools and the occasional gust of wind. Despite their differences, they had formed a routine, one where Alex worked on the ship's engine, and Zilara kept watch for any further threats. At first, their interactions had been tense, but over time, they began to communicate more easily. Zilara had been surprised by how well Alex worked. He wasn't an engineer or a technician, but he seemed to have an almost intuitive understanding of how things worked. He fixed parts she thought were beyond repair and figured out systems she had trouble with. Zilara didn't admit it out loud, but she was starting to respect his skills. One evening, as they took a break, Alex looked up at the sky. The stars shone brightly, a sharp contrast to the barren landscape of the moon. "Do you ever wonder if we're the only ones out here?" he asked. Zilara didn't look up. "No, there are always others. We just haven't found them yet." Alex nodded slowly. "I suppose you're right, but sometimes I think about how vast the universe is and how small we are in it." Zilara snorted softly. "Humans and your small ideas. The universe is vast, yes, but the strong always find a way to survive. You think too much about things that don't matter." "I disagree," Alex replied. "I think what matters most is how we choose to act in the face of it all. The universe might be big, but we still have the power to change things, to make a difference." Zilara was quiet for a long moment. She had never thought of it that way. To her, survival had always been about strength, fighting, conquering, and using fear to control others. But Alex's words made her question her beliefs, if only for a brief moment. Maybe, she said finally, her voice softening just a little. But in my world, power is everything. Alex didn't respond right away. He knew that Zilara's experiences had shaped her, just as his experiences had shaped him. He couldn't expect her to change overnight, but he could offer her something different, a new way of looking at things. Over the next few days, their bond grew stronger. They still disagreed on many things, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. They were partners now, working together to get her ship repaired. It was a fragile alliance, one built on respect and necessity. Alex didn't trust her completely, and Zilara wasn't sure she trusted him either. But they both understood that, in this moment, they needed each other. One afternoon, as Alex finished repairing a broken communication system, Zilara approached him. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice no longer filled with suspicion. "You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me." Alex paused, wiping his hands on a cloth. He looked up at her, his expression sincere. "Sometimes, doing the right thing isn't about what you owe someone. It's just what you do. I didn't help you because I had to. I helped because it felt like the right thing to do." Zilara stared at him, her gaze softening for the first time. She didn't know what to make of him. Alex was unlike any human she had ever encountered, and a part of her didn't know whether to trust him or stay distant. But another part of her, the part she kept hidden, found his kindness almost comforting. She nodded, silently acknowledging his words. "Thank you," she said quietly. It wasn't much, but to Alex, it was a start. He had no idea what lay ahead for them, but for the first time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance to build something stronger than just survival. The days on the moon were becoming routine. Alex worked tirelessly to repair Zilara's ship, while she kept a watchful eye on the horizon. The harsh conditions of the barren planet meant they had to stay vigilant, but it also gave them time to talk. Despite the initial tension, the air between them was no longer as cold as before. There was something unspoken between them now, a sense of mutual respect that neither had expected. One afternoon, Zilara decided it was time to test Alex. She had seen how skilled he was with his tools, but there was one thing she hadn't yet figured out: his strength. She had the power to lift heavy objects and fight without breaking a sweat, but she wondered if the human was as capable. "You think you're strong, human?" Zilara asked as she walked up to him, a challenging glint in her eyes. She wasn't trying to be mean, but her pride as a warrior was hard to suppress. Alex looked up from his work, his expression calm. "Strong," he repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Well, I wouldn't say that, but I can hold my own." Zilara grinned, the challenge in her voice clear. "Prove it. There's a rock formation just ahead. I'll bet you can't move the biggest one." Alex glanced over at the formation she was talking about. It wasn't a huge boulder, but it was certainly a challenge. Zilara was waiting, clearly expecting him to fail. But there was something in her eyes that told Alex this was more than just a test of physical strength. It was about pride, hers and his. "All right," Alex said, wiping his hands on his pants. "I'll give it a shot." He stood up and walked toward the formation. Zilara followed behind, arms crossed, watching closely. The rock was heavy, larger than anything Alex had tried to move before. He placed his hands on it, feeling the weight. The first thing he realized was that this was going to require more than just brute force. He'd have to use his wits, just like he did when working on the ship. Taking a deep breath, Alex began to push. At first, the rock didn't budge, and Zilara smirked. She had expected this. Humans were weak after all. But Alex wasn't done yet. He stepped back for a moment and surveyed the situation. Instead of trying to lift the rock directly, he noticed a smaller rock nearby, one that could serve as a lever. Alex grabbed it, wedging it beneath the larger rock, and began to use the smaller rock as a fulcrum. Slowly but surely, the large rock began to move. Zilara's smirk faded, replaced by surprise. She had never seen a human use their mind to solve a problem in such a way. Alex wasn't just strong in body. He was strong in his ability to think and adapt. With one final push, the rock shifted enough for Alex to move it out of the way. He stood up, breathing heavily but satisfied. Zilara stood there, her arms still crossed, but there was a spark of something new in her eyes. She hadn't expected him to succeed, let alone use strategy to do so. She had always relied on her physical strength, but now she was beginning to understand what Alex meant when he said that strength didn't always come from power alone. "Well," Zilara said, her voice quieter than usual, "I didn't think you had it in you, human." Alex smiled, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Told you. It's not always about muscle." Zilara looked at him, not with the challenge of a warrior, but with the respect of a peer. She had been wrong about humans. They weren't just weak and fragile. They were capable of more than she had ever given them credit for. As Alex returned to his work on the ship, Zilara felt a shift inside herself. She had learned something today, not just about Alex, but about what true strength really was. The days on the moon were slowly turning into weeks, and the ship was nearly ready for takeoff. Alex and Zilara had made a great team. Their routine was simple, but effective. While Alex fixed the ship, Zilara kept watch for any signs of danger. They worked well together, and there was an unspoken understanding between them now. But for Zilara, there was still something that didn't make sense. She had seen many humans in her lifetime, but none like Alex. Most humans she had met before had been frightened or submissive. They were quick to run, quick to give up. But Alex was different. Even in the face of danger, he remained calm and focused. His resilience was something she had never seen before. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zilara couldn't help but ask the question that had been bothering her for days. "You're not like the other humans," she said, her voice curious. "Why are you so resilient?" Alex didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. He had been through a lot in his life, but he had never really thought about why he kept going. It was just who he was. "I don't know," Alex said finally, his voice low. "Maybe it's because I've seen a lot of people give up. I've seen them lose hope. And every time I see that, I realize that if I don't keep going, they're lost forever. If I give up, then what happens to everyone else?" Zilara listened closely, not fully understanding at first. She was a warrior, trained to fight and survive. She had always thought that strength came from power, from taking control. But Alex's words made her think. Resilience, true resilience, wasn't about fighting. It was about holding on, no matter the odds. "Humans are weak," Zilara said slowly, almost as if she was testing the idea. "You rely on hope and trust, things that can be broken, but you don't let it break you." Alex nodded, the fire crackling softly between them. "I guess that's what makes us strong. We don't let the bad things destroy us. We just keep moving forward." Zilara was silent for a long moment. She had always thought of humans as fragile, easily crushed under pressure. But now, seeing Alex, his calmness, his ability to keep going when everything else seemed to fall apart, she began to realize that there was a different kind of strength in him. It wasn't the kind she was used to, but it was powerful in its own way. "You make it sound simple," she said, her voice thoughtful. Alex smiled slightly. "It's not always easy, but when you're in a tough spot, you don't think about the end. You just think about getting through the next minute, the next hour. And before you know it, you've made it." Zilara couldn't help but admire his determination. It was a quality she had always respected in others, even if she hadn't understood it until now. It wasn't the kind of strength that came from a sword or a fist. It was the kind of strength that came from within. "You're right," she said, finally understanding. "It's not about fighting. It's about surviving, no matter what." Alex looked at her, his eyes steady. Exactly. For the first time, Zilara truly understood what Alex meant. His resilience wasn't just about not giving up. It was about living with purpose, no matter the challenges ahead. And in that moment, she realized something important. There was more to humanity than she had ever imagined. The quiet routine of the past few weeks was shattered one evening as Alex and Zilara worked under the dim light of their makeshift camp. They had almost finished repairing the ship, and Zilara was starting to believe they might actually make it off the moon. But just as they prepared to test the final system, an eerie silence fell over the landscape. Zilara stiffened, her eyes scanning the horizon. The sense of calm she had come to enjoy was replaced by a sharp, uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach. Alex looked up from his work, sensing her change in posture. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. "There's something out there," Zilara whispered, her gaze fixed on the darkening sky. Her sharp senses had picked up the faintest vibrations in the air, something only someone with her training could detect. "I've been hearing something, a presence." Before Alex could respond, the sound of engines broke the silence. The unmistakable hum of a ship. Zilara's eyes narrowed. She recognized that sound. It wasn't friendly. "Get to the ship now," Zilara ordered. Her voice was tight with urgency. Alex didn't ask questions. He trusted her. He grabbed his tools and ran towards the ship, his heart racing. Zilara followed, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. Her training had taught her to never let her guard down, and she had learned that lesson the hard way. As they neared the ship, the sky above them lit up with the glow of approaching vessels. They were not alone anymore. A group of ships, sleek and menacing, descended from the sky, surrounding the area like vultures. Zilara recognized their markings instantly. The Ashari, a ruthless alien faction that had been hunting her people for years. They weren't here for rescue. They were here to finish what they started. "Stay close," Zilara whispered to Alex. "They're here for me." Alex's heart pounded in his chest. "What do we do?" "We fight," Zilara said, her voice filled with cold determination. "I'll handle them. You get the ship ready to launch." Alex wanted to argue, but he could see the look in Zilara's eyes. She wasn't asking for help. She was commanding it. He nodded quickly, knowing this wasn't the time to hesitate. He ran to the ship's control panel, flipping switches and checking systems. His mind raced as he worked, his hands moving with practiced precision, despite the chaos unfolding around him. Zilara stood guard nearby, her weapon ready, her eyes darting between the descending ships and Alex. The first of the Ashari soldiers landed, their armored forms intimidating as they stepped off their ships. Zilara didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, her blade flashing through the air as she took down the first soldier with ease. The sound of battle echoed across the moon, but Zilara fought with the speed and grace of a trained warrior. Each move was calculated, each strike precise. Alex's hands shook slightly as he worked on the ship, but he couldn't afford to think about fear. He had seen the determination in Zilara's eyes, and now he had to live up to it. He knew what was at stake. They had come this far together. He couldn't let her down now. As Zilara dispatched another enemy with a swift blow, she glanced at Alex. "How are we doing?" she called. "Almost ready." Alex shouted back, not pausing for a second. His mind was focused solely on getting the ship up and running. Zilara turned back to the enemy, preparing for another wave of attackers. She knew they were outnumbered, but she didn't care. She had faced worse odds before, and this time, she wasn't going to let fear control her. With the final systems online, Alex sprinted toward Zilara. The ship was ready for takeoff, but the Ashari were still closing in. "We leave now," Zilara said, her voice low but filled with a fire that Alex could feel in his bones. Without another word, the two of them ran toward the ship. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Zilara felt a flicker of hope. They might just make it out of here after all. The air in the ship was thick with tension as Alex and Zilara prepared for their escape. The Ashari had surrounded the area, their ships lighting up the dark sky, ready to strike again. The sound of the engines roared as Alex worked feverishly to keep the ship steady, pushing it through its systems, ensuring they could break through the atmosphere. Zilara stood beside him, her eyes never leaving the enemy forces outside, her weapon still gripped tightly in her hand. They had made it this far, but something still felt wrong to Zilara. The calmness Alex had shown during their escape had not gone unnoticed by her. He had stayed focused when everything around them was falling apart, and even now, as the ship shook from the force of the engines and the approaching enemies, Alex kept his composure. Zilara couldn't help but wonder why. Why wasn't he afraid? He should be. She had seen fear in the eyes of every human she had encountered. Every human who had seen her kind feared her power and run. But Alex, he was different. For the first time, she found herself doubting everything she had known. She had always believed that power and strength were the most important qualities to survive. But Alex had something else, something more. What if humans weren't as weak as she had always thought? What if they were more resilient than she had ever given them credit for? Her mind raced as the ship rumbled beneath them, the Ashari closing in. She glanced at Alex, who was working tirelessly at the control panel. There was no panic in his eyes, no hesitation in his movements. He wasn't even looking at her, but there was something in the way he held himself that made her uneasy. "Alex," she said, her voice quieter than usual. He glanced up, but before he could respond, she continued, "Why did you help me?" He looked at her, his brow furrowing slightly as if he didn't understand the question. "What do you mean?" Zilara's eyes searched his face, but she couldn't find the answer she was looking for. "Why risk your life for me? You barely know me. I'm not even your ally. Yet you've stood by me this entire time. Why?" Alex paused, his fingers stilling on the controls. He took a breath before speaking, his voice steady and calm. "Because it's the right thing to do. I've seen too many people give up, too many people leave others to suffer. I don't want to be like that." Zilara's mind churned. His words struck her deeper than she expected. The right thing to do. She had never really thought about humans that way. To her, they had always been selfish, weak creatures who did whatever they could to survive. But Alex was different. He was willing to sacrifice his own safety for the chance to help her, a stranger to him. "Don't you want to survive?" Zilara asked, her voice almost harsh. "What's the point of risking everything for someone like me?" Alex looked at her, his expression gentle but firm. "Surviving isn't everything. I don't want to survive by leaving others behind. I want to do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible." Zilara felt a weight in her chest, something unfamiliar. It wasn't fear, it was something more like doubt. She had never questioned her own purpose, her own survival instincts. But Alex was different. His way of thinking was making her question everything she had ever believed about herself. She turned away for a moment, the rumbling of the ship masking her thoughts. What was she supposed to do now? She had always relied on strength, on being the one who protected others. But Alex had taught her that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the greatest strength was in choosing to care for others, even when it seemed like it would cost you everything. "Thank you," Zilara said, her voice soft, almost like a whisper. "I don't know if I ever could have done this without you." Alex nodded, his eyes still focused on the control panel. "We're in this together. No one should have to face the world alone." Zilara remained quiet for a moment, feeling the strange warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she wasn't sure if it was the battle that worried her the most or the growing realization that Alex was showing her a side of humanity she had never known. A side that wasn't driven by fear, but by something much stronger. The ship finally broke through the atmosphere, and the dark expanse of space stretched out before them. The Ashari forces, unable to catch them in time, disappeared into the distance, their threat fading with the silence of space. Alex and Zilara sat in the cockpit, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound between them. Zilara was still processing everything that had happened. Her mind raced with the thoughts she had kept hidden for so long. She had always believed that survival came down to strength, brute force, dominance, fear. But Alex, this human who had risked his life to help her, had shown her something different. He had shown her what it meant to have courage in the face of uncertainty, to act not out of fear, but out of a sense of duty and purpose. The silence between them stretched, and Alex finally spoke, breaking her thoughts. "You've been quiet for a while. What's on your mind?" he asked, glancing at her. Zilara hesitated. She had spent so much time keeping her emotions and thoughts to herself, but something about the way Alex spoke made her feel like she could open up, even just a little. "I've been thinking," she began slowly, "about what you said, about doing the right thing. I've spent my entire life fighting. I've been taught to never show weakness, to never rely on others. And yet, here you are, helping me, despite everything, despite not even knowing who I am." Alex looked at her, his expression calm. "You're not the first person I've helped, Zilara. It's just what I do. You don't have to have all the answers to do the right thing. You just have to choose it when it matters." Zilara's gaze softened. She had always thought that survival and power were the most important things, that showing compassion was a weakness. But Alex's words made her question everything. He wasn't just talking about doing the right thing in the moment. He was talking about living with purpose, about choosing to help others because it was the right thing to do, not because of any reward or gain. "But why me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why help someone like me? I'm not like you. I'm a warrior, a soldier. I've killed. I've caused pain. What makes me worth helping?" Alex's eyes met hers, his voice steady and full of conviction. "Because everyone deserves a chance. You're not defined by your past, Zilara. What matters is what you choose to do now. I helped you because I believe you can change. I believe you can choose to be more than what you've been." Zilara stared at him, her mind spinning. She had always seen herself as a soldier, a weapon, someone who fought to survive. But Alex's words made her realize that she didn't have to be defined by her past. She didn't have to continue down the path of violence and destruction. She could change. She could choose a different way. "But I'm not sure I can change," Zilara said, her voice thick with doubt. "What if I can't leave all of that behind? What if I'm too far gone?" Alex reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's not about being perfect. It's about trying. That's all we can do. Take it one step at a time." Zilara felt something shift inside her. The weight of her past, the countless battles, the pain she had caused. It had always been with her, defining her every action. But now, for the first time, she felt like she had a choice, a chance to redefine who she was, to choose her own path. "I've never had someone believe in me before," Zilara said, her voice barely a whisper. Alex gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You've got someone now." For a long moment, Zilara sat in silence, feeling the weight of Alex's words sink in. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, she felt like she could move forward, without fear, without shame, and with a purpose that was her own. As the stars stretched out before them, Zilara looked at Alex, no longer seeing a human and an alien, but two beings who had faced the odds and come out stronger for it. And in that moment, she realized that this was only the beginning. The stars twinkled like diamonds in the vast blackness of space as Zilara and Alex navigated their ship away from the moon. The roar of the engines filled the cockpit, but the silence between them spoke volumes. Zilara had never been one for words, but as the planet grew smaller in their view, she felt the weight of everything that had happened between them. Alex was at the controls, his focus sharp. He was determined to get them both to safety, but Zilara could see the exhaustion in his eyes. They had been on the run for so long, and even though they had escaped the Ashari for now, she knew their troubles were far from over. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. Alex glanced over at her, his eyes tired but calm. "A few more minutes. Once we're past the atmosphere, we'll be in the clear." Zilara nodded, but something nagged at her. It was more than just the battle they had fought to get away. It was the question that had been haunting her for days now. Why had Alex helped her? Why had he stayed by her side when everything she had done in her life had been about survival and war? She had never known a human who cared so deeply for someone they barely knew. She turned toward him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Alex, I need to know something." He raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in her voice. "What is it? Why did you help me?" she asked again, her voice almost pleading. "You've risked everything for me, for someone like me. I don't understand." Alex didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the controls, but Zilara could see him thinking. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear the truth. What if he had just been trying to gain something from her? What if he had seen her as a tool to get out of danger? "I told you before," Alex said finally, his voice steady. "It's not about what I can get from you. It's about what's right. And helping you, protecting you, felt like the right thing to do." Zilara was quiet for a long time. She had never heard anyone speak like that before. Everyone she had known in her past was driven by power, by strength, by the need to survive at all costs. But Alex wasn't like that. He wasn't driven by fear or self-interest. He was driven by something else, something that Zilara couldn't quite understand. "You really believe that?" she asked, her voice soft. Alex glanced over at her, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I do." Zilara felt a lump form in her throat. She had spent so much of her life alone, believing that trust was a weakness. She had never let anyone in, never allowed anyone to get close. But Alex had done something she hadn't thought possible. He had earned her trust without asking for anything in return. For the first time, Zilara allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, she could trust someone. She had always been alone in her fight, believing that no one could understand her or the choices she had made. But Alex had shown her that there was more to life than fighting. There was something worth fighting for, something worth living for. "We've got a long way to go," Alex said, breaking the silence. "But we'll get through it, together." Zilara looked at him, her eyes steady. She knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more battles, more challenges, and more dangers ahead. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was facing it alone. And that thought brought her a strange sense of peace. The ship sailed through the dark expanse of space, leaving the moon far behind. Zilara and Alex had escaped the Ashari, but more challenges awaited them. Yet, as long as they had each other, Zilara knew they could face whatever came next. The stars outside the ship stretched endlessly in every direction, their cold light casting a soft glow over the cockpit. Zilara sat silently beside Alex, watching the distant twinkle of the galaxies, the vastness of space stretching before them. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt a sense of calm, a fleeting hope that things might be different now. They had escaped the Ashari and left the moon behind, but their journey was far from over. The universe was still full of dangers, and their path was uncertain. Yet, Zilara knew something had shifted within her. A change she couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't just the escape or the fight they had survived. It was everything that had happened between her and Alex. He had shown her a way of living she had never considered before, a way of living that wasn't based on power, fear, or violence. Alex glanced at her, sensing her quiet contemplation. "We're almost through the worst of it," he said, his voice steady, but filled with an underlying optimism. "We'll make it through. We've been through worse, right?" Zilara met his gaze, her eyes thoughtful. She had never been one to show emotion, never allowed herself to feel vulnerable. But with Alex, it was different. He had given her something she didn't think she would ever have. A sense of belonging, a sense of partnership. It was a feeling she wasn't used to, but she found herself accepting it, slowly and cautiously. "Yeah," she said, her voice softer than usual. "We have been through worse." Alex smiled, his confidence reassuring. And we've made it out. We'll keep going, one step at a time. Zilara nodded, though her mind was still filled with questions. She had always been a warrior, trained to rely on herself and trust no one. But Alex had changed that. He had shown her that maybe, just maybe, there was strength in letting go of her past, in trusting someone else, even if it meant facing uncertainty. Alex, she began, her voice hesitant but sincere. Thank you. For everything. I never thought I'd find someone who... Who what? He asked, curious. Who believed in me? Zilara finished, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was too far gone for that. But you made me see that I could still change. That I wasn't stuck in the past. Alex's smile softened. He didn't know what to say at first, but the words came naturally. You're not alone anymore, Zilara. You've never been alone. And no matter where we go, we'll keep moving forward. Together. Her heart stirred with an emotion she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. She had spent so long living by the rules of her past, fighting for survival, that she had forgotten there was more to life than that. Alex had reminded her that there was a world beyond fighting, beyond war. There was a future, one they could build, side by side. As the ship drifted further into the unknown, Zilara looked out at the vastness of space, no longer feeling the weight of her past dragging her down. For the first time, she felt like she had a purpose beyond survival. She wasn't defined by the battles she had fought or the pain she had caused. She was something more. And with Alex beside her, she knew that she could face whatever came next. Where do we go from here? Zilara asked, her voice full of quiet curiosity. Alex's eyes sparkled with a sense of adventure. Wherever the journey takes us. The universe is a big place, Zilara. And now, we're in it together. Zilara smiled, the weight in her chest lifting. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. With Alex, she knew they could face anything. Together, they would find their way into the unknown, but with hope leading the way.